Much love. So
Thank you.
there we go. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. So we're up in. Hey everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you as we talk about media. As we look at CBS, there is a new owner of CBS, the son of Larry Ellison, who, as of this taping, has become the wealthiest man in the world. He has surpassed, at least publicly wealthy, he has surpassed Elon Musk, the Oracle owner, and he has legated much of his wealth to his son, and his son has purchased CBS. Now, it's his politics, he is a staunch Zionist, as is his son, and he's hired Bari Weiss, who was with the New York Times as an opinion writer. She's now head of the news. And I had to ask Jim Narekas about this from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, because it seems that there is a defined, definite political slant that we're going to see at the house that Walter Cronkite built. And so I want to know what you think about that. Coming into your homes every day. This is not a cable channel. This is one of the big three, if you will. So I want to know what your thoughts are. Hello, Daryl and Bernadette, and correctional officer for the lockdown, sending you all so much love today. Please meet me on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, and I'm on X at Santita J. I'm also on Instagram, Santita Jackson, IG, Santita Jackson IG, of course, Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends. Please meet me there, please, please. And then, of course, I am here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. And as we're coming up, um, my prayers go out to conservative activist human being, Charlie Kirk. He's someone who has been credited with bringing a lot of Republicans, young people, into the Republican tent. And while his politics do not align with mine, he was shot as you're listening to this. And my heart goes out to him and just to everyone. I would hope that we would begin to learn that we do not resolve our differences politically, or be they political or personal, uh, with violence, verbal violence or physical violence or with a gun. And so I just pray for him today, because there were a lot of people who were there, thousands upon thousands, that he was shot in public. And it just pains me to see that this has happened. Um, and I would hope that as we mature in our politics, more than that, we're maturing spiritually. And send him some prayers. Pray that he will be okay. I've not, as of this um, recording of this broadcast, I do not know. Now it's just come across my chat line that he's in critical condition. So I don't know. We don't know which way this is going to go. But certainly my prayers go out to him. They go out to him and to all of his loved ones, and to all of us. Because indeed, Jim Narekas, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Now, my brother has full time security. He is in Congress, and he's had, just carrying the weight of our father's name and being in Congress at this time. Now he has to have full time security. I mean, we are living in a time in which everybody is stressed, and many people feel that they can resolve these issues um, by shooting someone, by killing someone. Please don't do that. And that's why I really work to keep the conversation civil in our chat line. Really, even when you disagree with someone, don't be unkind to people. Don't do that. Don't do that. You don't have to call people out of their names. You don't have to insult them. Just disagree and hug it out and keep it moving. Nobody's going to agree with someone all the time, Jim Narekas. My parents have been together since 1961. And they have plenty of disagreements, because, you know, they just disagree on some things, but they've been able to work out their marriage. And I think, that's a wonderful lesson, because believe me, they have some real disagreements. Their approaches. My mother's far more conservative than my dad is. And she's not moving. She's 10 toes down in it. And that's how it is. And next. and he loves her just the same, and she loves him just the same, and that's it. So, Jim, so here we are, but he is in critical condition as of at this time, and there it is. So, what do you have written? Now, you know, I'm always checking out fairness and accuracy in reporting. And according to your report, CBS drifts further toward right wing state television. As we look at, as the article begins, after Trump's Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem complained that several minutes of her August 31st Face the Nation interview had been shamefully edited to whitewash the truth, CBS News announced that its flagship Sunday morning program will no longer edit its interviews. And now we just keep on going. And it turns out that they will now be purchased by Larry Ellison's son. And Bari Weiss, I think that is what has really gotten everyone has caught everyone's attention, because she is stridently Zionist. And everyone has a right to their opinion. I just hope that you don't bend the news in that direction. There's something about that. But, you know, and that's the fear. That's part of the fear. So you explain to us what happened and why many people are concerned about what will happen to CBS News.
Well, CBS News, it's one of the oldest television networks. It's been around since the dawn of television, and has enjoyed a strong reputation for journalism, in shows like 60 Minutes and Face the Nation. TV journalism is sometimes considered an oxymoron, but
Yes.
but people look to CBS as representing, the best in commercial TV journalism in the United States, and it's now being sold. The Redstone family, which has owned it, is selling out, looking to cash out. And the purchaser is a company called Skydance, which is kind of a minor media player, but it's got the backing of its owner's father, Larry Ellison, who, as you say, is as of today the world's richest human being. He gained, because of a rise in the price of the stock of his company, Oracle. He gained $101 billion today, making him richer than Elon Musk. And his politics are right wing, Trumpian. He's an election denier. He believes, against all evidence, that Trump won the 2020 election, and has been a major contributor to Trump and to other right wing causes. And he is now going to he's putting up the money for the purchase of one of the big three broadcast networks in the United States. And lest people think that broadcast journalism is dead, it's also CBS.com, which is a major online news outlet. It's got I went and checked. It's got 68 million viewers a month, visitors a month,
and I am one of them.
It's a serious player in the information diet of the United States, and in order to get the sale of Paramount, which is CBS's parent company, to Skydance, the Paramount has basically been groveling to the Trump administration and offering them basically everything they want, and all kinds of political assurances in order to get the sale approved. For one thing, they settled a lawsuit that Trump had sued 60 Minutes because they had edited the interview that 60 Minutes did with Kamala Harris in 2024, which is absolutely normal behavior on the part of a TV news program. When you interview someone, you don't generally air the uncut interview. You edit it to get what you think are the most interesting parts of it to the audience. But Trump got it into his head that somehow CBS editing the interview was somehow defaming him. I'm not sure what exactly the theory behind his lawsuit was, but he was suing them for millions of dollars. And it was a completely ridiculous lawsuit. I don't think you could find any like credible lawyer, legal expert who would say, "Oh yeah, he has a strong case there." But the thing is, when you're the president of the United States, if you make a nuisance lawsuit and you've got the power of the federal government behind you, you can get people to capitulate and agree that it makes more sense to settle a completely frivolous lawsuit than it does to fight it in court, where I think it's quite certain that they would have won. But instead, they settled for $16 million. It's basically a bribe, to settle a lawsuit when you don't have to. You're just offering money. In this case, $16 million to I believe it was the Trump Library that was getting the money in this case. It's going to be the most best funded library in presidential history, I believe, given all the slush funds that are being poured into it.
The plane, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's going to. How many libraries have their own jet plane? And they've also agreed. They've made a series of statements about the varied viewpoints that are going to be offered on CBS once it's purchased. And this is, I think there's something very Orwellian going on here, where the idea is that you are promoting free speech by limiting viewpoints to those that are approved by the Trump administration. And the Trump administration has, by the way, made it very clear that they're willing to use the FCC as a political tool. Brennan Carr, the FCC chair under Trump, is bragging that he is very willing to take licenses away from stations, from networks that in his opinion are not serving the public interest. And it's very much a MAGA understanding of the public interest. These are, if you're not towing the line, then you are distorting the truth, and therefore you have you're subject to being censored by the U.S. government. It's a complete inversion of the First Amendment, where government power is now used to enforce the conformity to official viewpoints, at the risk of having the license that your livelihood depends on taken away from you. The latest in this litany of capitulations and concessions being made by Paramount is after Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Director, appeared on Face the Nation, CBS's Sunday morning show, and they were discussing Quimar Abrego Garcia, the person who was illegally sent to El Salvador and had to be brought back after a court said that his being sent there was illegal. And being asked about this, Noem made a bunch of scurrilous allegations that the U.S. government has never backed up with evidence, to try to smear him, basically. And CBS cut those because they didn't want unsubstantiated smears being put on their airwaves, and Noam was hopping mad that CBS was whitewashing the truth. And so, in keeping with their new policy of doing everything they can to make the Trump administration happy, the Face the Nation announced that they would no longer edit their interviews. They would air them basically like live to tape. And given that Face the Nation's interviews are overwhelmingly with government officials, it is basically saying we are going to give government officials just free airtime to say whatever they want, and we will put it on the air, no questions asked. It's a real abdication of any kind of journalistic responsibility. And then to top it off, they have announced the hiring of what they call an ombudsman. Now, an ombudsman is someone traditionally who takes complaints from the public and deals with them. You know, in the case of an ombud at a news agency, this would be the person who, if you felt like a story run by a news outlet was biased, you could go to the ombud and say, "Hey, this was not right," and they would they deal with those complaints. But Paramount says that that Kenneth Weinstein, the person hired as ombud, who's comes from the right-wing think tank Hudson Institute, corporate-backed think tank, was a would-be ambassador under the first Trump administration. He is, according to Paramount, he's not going to have a public-facing role. In other words, he's not there to take complaints from the public. He's there to take complaints from presumably the White House, and make sure that the White House has a direct line to micromanage the news reporting for CBS News. So it's basically a government commissar, you know, a political watchdog placed there by the government in order to make sure that there isn't anything aired on CBS that the government disapproves of, which is a pretty frightening day in the history of journalism in the United States.
Where do you who is Bari Weiss?
Bari Weiss is she runs an outlet called Free Press, and speaking of Orwellian, she is, I think, the epitome of the idea that that censoriousness, that censorship is free speech, because she is of the school of thought that right-wing ideas have been censored in our culture and our media, and by censored they mean criticized. Mm-hmm. You know, this is a theory called cancel culture, and cancel culture is the idea that you can no longer say whatever you want because people will criticize it, which is to say people will use their own free speech to respond to your speech, which is basically what the First Amendment anticipates, is that by the government not controlling speech, people will express their own viewpoints, and those viewpoints will differ, and people will argue about things, and that will advance the cause of truth. But from the viewpoint of cancel culture, the worry is not government censorship. The worry is that on Twitter, a lot of people will respond to your tweet in a unfriendly way, and that this will, you know, censor you. Bari Weiss used to be at the New York Times and quit because of what she viewed as censorship there, which is to say there were colleagues at the New York Times who didn't like her ideas. That was, to her view, an insidious form of censorship. And I feel like it completely reverses the meaning of what censorship is. Just when you say that the threat to free speech is other people's free speech, it's other people's speech, then you're saying that in order to protect free speech, you need to shut up people. You need to shut people down. And I think that is the ruling idea of the 2020s, is that we are seeing an attempt to silence people through direct government intervention, people being deported for speaking out. And the underlying theory is that by expelling people who have the wrong ideas, who are critical of the people with the right ideas, you are somehow advancing the cause of free speech, and that's what I mean by Orwellian. It's basically saying that censorship is freedom, and I think that Barry Weiss, more than anyone else, embodies this ideology, which I find a really disturbing one.
So, I mean, what is our takeaway from this? Because I'm wondering when we look at just our news media, they have increasingly a political bent, and I don't know what we're supposed to do with that, how we're supposed to get our information. I mean, I'm not saying that we have not been propagandized since the beginning. I think Mr. Bernays really, though, took it to another level, 60, 70 years ago, and more and longer. But now it seems that the news is completely siloed, and there is almost no, we don't have a set of facts upon which we agree. And that to me is very dangerous. I mean, and we're seeing that when we look at this young man who's been shot today. And there's so much vitriol, there's so much mean-spiritedness in this. I mean, because what I've seen Barry Weiss, she's been quite mean-spirited, and that's unsettling.
Yes, Barry Weiss got her start in journalism and political activism by trying to silence pro-Palestinian professors at her school. That is the origin of her free speech campaign, and it's basically the idea that by people who are critical of Israel are silencing pro-Israel people by their criticism, and that's has been the basic response to people who have been protesting the genocide in Gaza, is that these people need to be silenced, the protesters, because in speaking out against Israel, they are intimidating pro-Israel students and making them feel uncomfortable, and therefore they are censors in their anxiety-provoking speech, and therefore they need to be expelled. And I think that is the end point of this distorted view of what free speech is that you are silencing people in the name of free speech.
So where do you, just before you go, where do you see CBS News going now? Because he has put her atop CBS News after giving her more than $100 million for free press, her Substack. I mean, and that was valued at about $15 million, $15 to $25 million, depending upon what I've heard, what I've read, what's been reported. But she's gotten this massive payout. What do they expect her to do?
Yeah. Well, when you make $100 billion in one day, you can afford to throw money around, I guess. Frankly, where I see CBS heading is down the tubes. I don't think that people are. I don't think there's that much of a market, given the saturation of Fox News, of Newsmax, of One America Network. There are a lot of MAGA sources out there, and I think what they seem to anticipate is kind of a MAGA light, something that looks like regular journalism, but is friendlier to the Trump administration. And I don't think that is something. I don't think that people who are real Trump fans are really interested in seeing something that is 75% Trump. They would like something that's 100% Trump. And I don't know if other than completely remaking 60 Minutes as an entirely different program, I don't think you can get it to 100% Trump. So I don't have high hopes for CBS either certainly as a journalistic enterprise, and I have real doubts about it as a commercial enterprise going forward. I think that they're going to lose the audience that they have, and I don't know that they're going to be able to get a new audience of MAGA heads to replace them.
Well, I mean, increasingly, Americans do not trust corporate media, and so it's one more nail in the coffin. I think that you're right, Jim Narakis. But that is why I depend upon fairness and accuracy in reporting. You should have known you were going to hear from me today. I read this yesterday. I said, "Oh, I've got to get him. He's got to talk about this because I've been very concerned about this." But we're going
Very
to
concerning. It's disturbing news.
And you're concerned why? Before we go,
I think that having a state news it's not healthy for a democracy to have, particularly where you have a government that is so committed to creating its own reality. To have a media that simply serves as an echo chamber is really dangerous. Just one example: the Secretary of Energy tweeted recently that solar power and wind power are useless when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. Now, he's not an idiot. He knows that there's such a thing as batteries, right? But he's saying this because it's an argument, for the fossil fuels that he represents, and so he says it despite its complete lack of any connection to reality. He puts it out there because he knows that there are media outlets that will echo this and take up this falsehood, serve it to the base that they depend on, and that works. And I feel like that is emblematic of how the Trump administration works and how the media ecosystem that has developed around the MAGA movement works, is just to say whatever you want to say in order to whatever you can put out there to carry your argument, and then just have so-called journalists to agree with it. And I think that's where CBS is heading.
Well, we will be on the lookout. I think that you need to watch just to be sure, everybody, because this is the only protected profession in our Constitution. The press, not the media, the press, the free press. We're supposed to get our information. We are governed by informed consent. And if we don't get the information, the right information, wow, what will we do? Jim Narakis, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, sending my love to Janine Jackson and the whole team at Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. You all do such great work.
Thank you so much.
Please go to fair.org, support them as they support us. Let me bring, as we say goodbye to Jim Narakis, Kathy Kelly, Mrs. Kathy Kelly from World Beyond War, and of course, Attorney Mark Fancher. I'm so glad to have you all here. I was struck by something that I saw, and coming on TikTok, I was in communication with Medea Benjamin, who, she said, well, she sent me a text. She said, you're always teasing me about getting arrested. Well, I was just arrested. So I'm getting a little bit of rest now. I was like, here we go. And then, of course, I went online and she had been arrested. Really standing up for freedom and justice, which is what she and our sisters at Code Pink do. And it seems that there is a lot, Attorney Fancher and Kathy Kelly, that people are speaking up and they're speaking out. I saw an American serviceman, an American servicewoman, and they were in uniform and they went online, and this is where they were. Every American sitting at home right now needs to realize that you are paying for a genocide. Rise up! Rise up, America! Rise up! It is time to take back this country from these corrupt politicians. It is time. It is beyond time. They were being arrested at that moment on Capitol Hill. They were in the congressional office buildings and they were in uniform, and they did that purposely and purposefully. And I wanted you to speak to that because it's just a very interesting time. And you've had some people, we've had a young man who burned himself to death, self immolated, just trying, and this was more than a year ago, trying to bring attention to Gaza. And you have a lot of people who are serving in our armed forces who have great objections to this. It's not a war, it is a genocide against the people. Wars are between armies. That is not what's happening here. And so I want to ask you, starting with you, Kathy Kelly, because I was struck by these people because they were stoic and they were willing to be arrested and presumably to take whatever punishment that would be coming from their superiors. You know, they could be dishonorably discharged. There's so much that could happen to them. I don't know what their statuses are, but what do you make of that? Particularly now, as it seems that there is a heightened awareness of what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening all over the world. And Americans, I think, are more engaged and more, as they say, in their feelings than ever before, or certainly than we have been in a long time. Kathy Kelly.
Well, today is Medea Benjamin's 73rd birthday.
Mm.
And when you see her in her pink t-shirt, she's in uniform also.
Mhm.
And I watched her being arrested and thought, oh, Medea seems very calm and very dignified and, having a, a needed conversation with the people leading her away. For Josephine Guibault and Anthony Aguilar, I can't imagine that it's easy for them to put on the uniform and go in the face of what they were trained to do year after year after year, which was to obey authority and see themselves as military leaders uh, who have embraced an ethic that they believed in, and they, I think, have risked a great deal because of the um, the greater likelihood of suicide on the part of combat veterans because of the traumas that are sustained when people go against their deepest feelings of humanity and care for others and say, okay, I'm going to press that button, I'm going to kill that child. So when Anthony Aguilar and Josephine Guibault are being led away in handcuffs and Josephine is screaming, people might think, oh, well, she seems like she's unhinged. That's really unruly behavior. But the first time I encountered Josephine Guibault, she was dressed in her military uniform. She's a former intelligence officer, and she was in the Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza last spring, and I think she was on day 15 of a full fast, no food, only liquids. And she calmly spoke with passersby. And she has spent a great deal of time committing herself to what Aaron Bushnell also committed himself to put an end to the killing, to the recklessness. If you saw someone breaking into a car and then planning to speed off recklessly, and you knew the person had become addicted, you'd scream, right? You'd try to do something. And that's what we find military people are doing. But it does create cognitive dissonance. Uh, because when people see people in uniform that are going into Senate office buildings and being arrested as they scream on their way out, it makes people wonder. And I think that for me, had I not seen Roy Bourgeois, who had become a Maryknoll priest, but who talked to us about holding an orphan in his arms in Vietnam, had I not seen his example of courage and that of Mike Ferner, whom you've so often hosted,
Mhm.
or right now I think of Phil Tottenham, who's on one of the boats
Mhm.
in the Samud flotilla, and well, actually, he's in the hospital because when he got to Tunis, he was really, really sick. Those boat trips aren't particularly easy, and
Mhm.
the combination of seasickness and who knows what kinds of contaminants they're exposed to landed him in the hospital. But these are actions which become so necessary in the face of what the United States is doing in unwavering support for Israel's reckless genocide.
Hmm. Attorney Mark Fancher, what do you make of these service persons speaking out?
It's a really, really profound occurrence because, I've never been in the military, but from what I understand, whenever you become a part of that, then uh, part of the training involves getting the soldier into a state of mind where they're no longer engaging in critical analysis of missions that they're assigned to carry out. They are trained to have unquestioning obedience to their superiors. There is a chain of command that's drummed into them and they understand it. And really, from objectively, from a military standpoint, that's essential. You can't go into battle with your troops analyzing and questioning what you're doing. That's a prescription for failure when you're engaged in war. So the fact that the institution has done what it's supposed to do with these individuals and train them to have an unquestioning attitude toward the overall enterprise, and to then have them nevertheless step out of that to recognize that what the country is engaged in is so fundamentally immoral, so fundamentally against all that's just and against the best interest of humanity, is really evidence of just what a grand evil the U.S. is engaged in right now, and the fact that it has pushed people in the military to the point where they can't ignore, they can't deny the fundamental immorality and injustice of what we're engaged in. And I think that it is probably a signal of more to come because this goes beyond what even they, as soldiers, have been trained to expect as part of their military assignment. They are taught that there are certain fundamental laws and rules of war, that they are going to be engaged in attacks against combatants, people who are just like them, coming from other countries or other forces. They are trained that it's off limits to gratuitously impose violence on civilians, specifically children and elders and others. All of these kinds of things that are going on, especially in Gaza, are in stark contradiction with everything that they've been taught about what is supposed to happen during a war. And uh, they can't help but see it. They can't be help but be observers to it, and they can't help but begin to question uh, what it is that they're being asked to do or what they're being asked to support. And enemy forces have always understood the importance of it, which is why there has historically been propaganda which has been directed at the troops of opposing forces. And it was probably most effective in the Vietnam War when many of the propaganda messages by the North Vietnamese were directed at Black soldiers in particular. And their message was very, very strong. It was that, here we are, we're an oppressed people. We are people who have never done anything to cause problems for Black people or others. And you're being sent in here to fight a war on behalf of big multinational corporations when your own people back at home are deprived of the most basic human and civil rights. And those kinds of messages, too, were intended to cause people to think and to resist. And you have other examples as well, where just the sheer volume, the number of people who were opposed to injustice caused soldiers to put down their rifles. And I'm talking specifically about in the Philippines when Ferdinand Marcos was in his last days as dictator of that country, and people by the millions were spilling out into the streets and were approaching his palace. And the soldiers who were guarding it were confronted by these waves and waves of outraged humanity. And eventually they just dropped their rifles and blended in with the crowd. And I think that that always signals the end for oppressive regimes. And I think that it can very well make the difference with respect to this country and with respect to the Zionist forces in Israel.
And I have to announce that Charlie Kirk has just been pronounced dead, the conservative commentator. The announcement just came from the White House. And as I said at the top of the broadcast, whatever your politics, violence is not the way. This is not the way we resolve conflicts. And I have to say, my heart is broken right now because that was a human being. Just as my heart breaks for the Sudan and Yemen and Gaza, it's just a lot. And I have to tell you, Kathy Kelly and Mark Fancher, all of my life I've lived with the specter of assassination. So with all due respect, this is very personal to me. And maybe because I'm getting older, I just can't hold it in the way my mother trained me to do. It's just a lot to take. I'm just wondering when we're going to learn. This is just not right, everybody. And it will not end here. And that is what grieves me so. It won't end here. And it should. It should. When you tell me about these service persons, Kathy Kelly, their hearts are broken because they entered into service honorably. And they're being asked to do something dishonorable. And it is an assault upon their conscience, their consciences. And it must be hard for them to walk through the day and to sleep at night. And you see so many of our soldiers who, because of moral injury that Matthew Ho talks about, they end up hurting others and hurting themselves. And here we are once again. So, excuse me, I just, you all can carry on. That was just a lot for me to see. And it's just a lot. But I'm hoping that we will grow in our politics, Kathy Kelly. Pardon me, but that's just a lot to see.
Well, Santita, you'd be a rock if you weren't feeling these kinds of deep, deep emotions. And certainly, knowing that your father and mother were known all around the world for the values that they upheld, and they were marching right alongside people who had been gunned down, would make assassination seem all too real. I sometimes think I know a lot about a situation and then start opening it up again and realizing how little I actually knew. And in 1942, there was a collective of young people in Germany who had said, we can't go on like this. We can't continue. And there was one family, the Scholl family, and the father in that family had said to his teenage kids, "What do you mean you want to join the National Socialist youth groups? Don't you see what they would do to your Jewish neighbors? Don't you under?" And so the kids listened to their dad. And um, the older one, the boy, Hans, had been sent off with the military uh, to fight against the Soviets. And uh, he came back. He'd been sent off as a medic. He resumed his studies, greatly influenced his sister, who looked up to him. She was 21, he was 24. He would go out with Christopher Probst at night and with a paintbrush and red paint anti-Hitler slogans on the walls. Extremely reckless, dangerous thing to do. And the two of them were at Munich University. They had already sent through the postal mail decks of flyers, and they distributed them to their friends at other universities. They were inside the university. Sophie impetuously pushed an entire deck of flyers off the top ledge of a 4-story staircase. They fluttered down, and each flyer was signed, "We will not be silent." Each flyer denounced the Nazis for what they were doing and the final solution that was slaughtering European Jewry and others. And a janitor saw them. And they were immediately arrested. They were held for 3 days. They were put on trial, but they were executed by guillotine. And now, when I see the thumbnail sketches of the faces of Palestinian young people who don't even go to trial, they're just summarily executed because they must, they believe, bear witness to the atrocities they're seeing. Every day that composite sketch gets larger. There are over 220 Palestinian young people who said, okay, I'm not going to pick up arms and join a military group. I'm going to believe that words can be stronger than weapons, and they are summarily executed. And one of the youngest didn't even get a chance to make that kind of a choice. His name was Mohammed Baradwil, and he was just out for a walk with his father, whom he, I'm sure, looked up to. The man was a fisherman, and they saw it. They were eyewitness to a massacre of emergency medical technical workers. They were, by the Israelis, shot in the head and the torso in a pre-dawn raid that massacred 15 people. This little boy was ordered to lie down on the ground. He could smell the burning ambulance, must have been terrified. 2 months later, because investigators were asking him and his father, "What did you see? What did you hear?" He's standing in the fishing boat, and an Israeli naval gunship gunned down 12-year-old Mohammed Baradwel in front of his father. So kill the witnesses, hide the crimes. And this is what causes people to say, okay, I'm going to take charge. And Charlie Kirk is slaughtered. You know, I think it was William Penn, the Quaker, who had been asked by a young person, when will I know when it's time to put down the gun? And the answer was, when it's too heavy to pick it up. And in your tears today, Santita, we feel that sense of when it's too heavy to keep going with these sordid, failed, utterly futile practices. and instead rise up to the occasion of taking on responsibility to solve the world's problems without killing one another.
Attorney Mark Fancher, before we go, what say you?
Yeah, I know it sounds uh, redundant because we say it so often, but God gave us a prescription for all of this. It was, first of all, love Him, but second, love one another. It's as simple as that. And I think anytime that humanity or human beings uh, avoid complying with those very basic directions, then we have tragedy, we have problems. And I think, unfortunately, we're living in a period when there is not just a tendency to ignore the command, but there is a deliberate effort to try and break it at every opportunity. We have moved into an era when hatred, division, animosity are all regarded as virtues, that you are regarded as someone special if you can hate someone, if you can marginalize someone, if you can villainize someone, if you can target someone as being different and worthy of persecution and division and alienation. And that is not a prescription for a society that is going to emerge as one that's a loving society, one that's a caring society, and one that's going to be free of the type of wanton, gratuitous violence that we've witnessed so often in recent times. And so I think that the blessing in this, if there is one to be found, is that to the extent that people continue to retain any semblance of their most basic morality and humanity, then they will reach a point where their lust for violence, their lust for hatred, is finally satiated, that they get to the point where they just can't take it anymore.
Mhm.
And I think that God has a great capacity to work with that, that even those among us in this society who trade in hatred and division,
Mhm.
uh, if God works with them by helping them to appreciate that even those that they're allies with, like Charlie Kirk, are not immune
Mhm.
to the blowback and to the consequences of hatred that runs amok, then they too finally might get their fill of it and begin to understand enough is enough, that we are all children of God and
Mhm.
we can't afford to continue to hate each other. We can't afford to use that for purposes of political advantage.
Mhm.
We can't afford to use that as the basis for trying to elevate ourselves into positions of power or to gain wealth or any of the other things that have found their way onto the agendas of politicians. And I think it's significant that we began this discussion by talking about soldiers, military personnel who had had their fill of it,
Mhm.
that they are exposed to enough of this kind of talk for purposes of training that they reach an understanding or a sense, a feeling that there are limits, that at a certain point you just can't continue to go down that violent road and you have to stand up and speak against it. And we can only hope and pray that there are those who are the closest allies of Charlie Kirk who, instead of rising up out of this tragedy and saying that we need vengeance, will instead rise up and say we need love, because they recognize that that's really the only way out of this for everybody, not just for some.
Amen to that. And love is the answer, everybody. It really is. At the end of the day, I'm mindful of things that Mr. Kirk has said that were injurious to so many people, Black people, all people. That having been said, I would never wish him any harm, and I did not. I don't want to become what I argue against. Dr. King said, you know, if I'm the last person in the room, I'm going to stay with nonviolence and I'm going to stay with love. And I hope that we will begin to do that, everybody. There's something that is happening in the atmosphere where we have our servicemen and servicewomen who want peace. I hope that something happens in the atmosphere where Mr. Kirk was assassinated in Utah and in this country and in this world. I hope that there will be a change of heart. I hope that there will be a change of tone. I hope that we will begin to love one another. We don't have to agree. We were not commanded to agree with one another. We were not commanded to like one another, but the commandment is to love. And when you love, you'll begin to like, tolerate people and all the little quirks that they have. The irritations will become quirks. And you will seek understanding with someone that you love. So let's do that, everybody. Let's do that. And let's have peace. But if you want to have peace, you need to be peace. And you can't have peace without love. It just doesn't work that way. All my love to you, Kathy Kelly, World Beyond War.
Yeah.
Mark Fancher, attorney Mark Fancher, all my love to you. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about you voting, right? And about how we can reclaim the higher ground more than while President Trump got 58% of the vote in Missouri, they are set to gerrymander and take 90% of the representation. Now, you know that's unfair. We've got to talk about that. We've got to talk about that. Got to. So I'm sending you all so much love. Join me in the next hour of the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.